Who have you watched in the first 3 or 4 games that have stood out to you? Because I have a couple, but I want to see who you've thought about that you really like to see.
Yeah. So of the games I've watched, of course, haven't watched a ton of the NBA TV games. I've generally just stuck with the ESPN games at night. Watched the Spurs game last night and also watched the Rockets Pistons. Watched a little bit of Warriors Pelicans, but by that time it was a little late and I got a little distracted with planning a golf trip to Ireland. So didn't,
A little distracted.
That's my life. That's my life. Look, I think in general, I'll make a point in general. When a rookie shows some promise and either has a legit stretch of games like Jabari Smith did at one point, or is first team all rookie, second team all rookie, and then decides to show up to summer league. I think historically you would expect them to play well. They understand the game. They've had the seasoning. They've been through the year. There's more experience. There's a level of confidence. They're now used to being a professional. I think that's something I want to talk about with Wembanyama in a second. But I think in general, I'm not surprised at the play of Jabari Smith, and I'm not surprised at the play of Tari Eason. But for second-year guys in the games that I've watched, they have really stood out. And Jabari Smith in particular, the second half of game one and then all of last night, I think he's just playing with a level of confidence, a level of freedom. The moment, the game, it doesn't feel bigger than it is. Whereas I think sometimes with rookies coming in, the game, the summer league, it's an ordeal and it can feel a little bit bigger than it is. So those two guys have really stood out to me. Wembanyama last night was great. And I thought it was really interesting, Tommy. I don't know if it was yesterday or it was at some point in the last few days, he was doing a press conference and he just talked about the last month since his season wound down, coming to New York a few days before the draft, doing our podcast, doing a sit down with Robin Roberts, doing a sit down with Malika, the draft, going to San Antonio, getting ready for summer. It's just like, there's nothing normal. And so when I talk about being a professional, I'm talking about, a lot of rookies by the end of their rookie year, all of a sudden they have a routine. They have a plan for the offseason. And Vic has just kind of jumped from his season to this media whirlwind and not surprised at all that he struggled in game one. And I think last night in particular, offensively, we saw how good he can be, for stretches. Look, he's going to be a rookie. Still, body's got to fill out all that stuff. But I was really impressed last night, but I wasn't surprised that he struggled a little bit in game one.
Yeah, he talked about it after game one. He also talked about it yesterday. He just said basically like he hated the drama. He just wants to hoop. He said it to us. He said it in the show. He said it in some other interviews. Like he just wants to hoop. He wants to go to Texas and just like work on parts of his game and not deal with everything else. And it's unavoidable with where he is as a guy and what it means to the league to sort of have him in this spot. But
and of course, look, the kid's 19. Like you're telling me he's not distracted by the Britney Spears incident.
Yeah.
Like, not that he did anything wrong, but it's just like, that's another thing, right?
It's like an international sideshow. Yeah.
Yes. But the point is, for a guy who by all accounts, and he talked about it with us and we've read every article about him and people that have embedded themselves over the past season with him and have written about this, the guy values structure and routine and he hasn't had that. And so, I'm just, this is why I keep going back to the San Antonio thing. Like, I don't think the guy wants a distraction of a Miami or a LA or a New York City. Like, I think the guy just wants to be in a good organization and hoop, and he's going to have that opportunity in San Antonio.
And you can tell. I went to the game yesterday. You could just tell watching him on the bench how much he enjoys being a teammate. And he enjoys his teammates playing well. He just is like, everything else doesn't matter. It's just about, he even said after the game yesterday, because he played great and they lost, he's like, I'd rather that we won. I did Jabari question. So he's, for people who haven't followed the numbers, he's for the first two games, 35.5 points, 64% true shooting, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. He definitely played better the second half of last year. We've talked a bunch about their ups and downs. but he's still so young. And I know we don't want to draw too many conclusions from a summer league performance, even if he keeps this up in summer league. But I kind of am like, what do you expect from him this year? Because it does feel like somebody who, because of their team struggles last year, was slept on a little bit. And this is a guy that, like, a lot of people thought he was going to be the number one pick. I mean, he's somebody who's his upside going into the draft last year was insanely high, and nothing has really changed that would make anyone sort of think different. And so, even when we think about like that team overall, is there a world where like this is setting the stage for like potentially like a monster second season for him?
Yeah, good question. I think what's interesting about Houston as it relates to Jabari Smith is he came into the Houston Rockets last year as a rookie, highly touted, obviously potential number one pick, and he's learning on the fly. And I would like to say there's some level of continuity going into next season, but the reality is there's not, right? You've added so many pieces. You've added another top 5 pick. You've added another talent-wise top 5 pick in Cam Whitmore. You have a new coach. So in some ways, I think his second season is going to be a whole new learning experience, right? He's going to play with Fred. You got Dylan Brooks on the court. He's going to have some mentorship from guys like Jeff Green. So, like, I think it's all a positive, but in terms of that continuity, we're like, all right, we're building with this group and with this coach and this. It's like, no. They've scrapped a lot of things. We don't know the roles of guys. As you bring in Fred VanVleet on a max contract, the guy's going to play. You drafted a guy who is a point guard in Amen Thompson. Like, so I have a lot of questions. They're all good questions because I think there's some talent there, and I think Udoka is a great coach. So it's not that I feel bad for Jabari Smith, but I think in some ways he's going to have to relearn a bunch of things, or in the case of the coaching, he's going to have to learn completely new things. So it's not to say like let's temper the expectations, because I think he can have a monster year, but that's a team. I don't care if they're 29-53 or 53-29. They're going to be fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's just a lot of talent.
Speaking of Amen, what have you liked about his brother so far with the Pistons? Because he's had a couple really interesting games to me.
Well, I thought, and then Amen before he got hurt looked awesome too. I mean, I think we talked about this on the show. We definitely talked about it off the show with those two going into the draft. Victor aside, it felt like they had as much upside as anybody. And I think they're sort of I think what's going to be interesting I think the Pistons situation is similar to the Houston situation when you have all these young players just figuring out the fit, and figuring out like how to, with all the other good young players they have there with Cade coming back as well. It's like, how do these pieces mesh together? And do you feel like I was thinking about this yesterday when I was watching the game. Do you feel like OKC, they are like a good sort of test case for everybody to follow, but like it feels like with their young guys, their roles are more defined at this point. And obviously they're going to keep getting better. We're going to see what happens with Chet, but like Houston and Detroit, like we don't even know who's going to play. You talk about like Jabari. It's like Jabari versus Şengün. It's like there's there are so many. It's like they have too many good potential young players for like minutes on the court, and it's only 5 guys can play at once. And so I feel like that would be the question I would have with both of these teams, which is honestly, it feels like it's on the coaches, right? It's on Monty and it's on Udoka.
Yeah, and I do know, like with Wiseman in particular, when they brought him in, it was really as like a reclamation project. Obviously not a good fit in Golden State, and hadn't played a ton of basketball. Like let's acknowledge that. And so, giving him room to grow through mistakes, actually figuring out, hey, what type of player can this guy be? My question to that is though, like, are you taking minutes away from Jalen Duren? Because I love that guy. That guy. Like, give me that guy on my team. So I'm like, all right, to your point, I think your point is valid. And I brought up the Houston situation, but you look at Detroit and it's like, all right, well, Jaden Ivey second half of the year, showed some real chops and promise running pick and roll. And you're like, well, if Cade needs the ball in his hands and is going to be your primary guy, well, where does that put Jaden Ivey? Like, how does that hurt his development? And that's not to say you don't stagger lineups and they don't complement each other when they are on the court. But that's to me a little bit of the joy in coaching is problem solving, right? You're figuring out how to make lineups work. You're figuring out how to develop players. So in some ways, like, you could be really excited, but in other ways, you're like, well, how is this going to work, right?
Yeah.
How is this going to work? And to me, I brought up Sir Thompson, and like, I love what he does on a basketball court because he kind of does everything. And he was sort of pegged as the better shooter of the two Thompson twins. And Jesus, man, if that guy becomes a decent 38% 3-point shooter at 5 attempts a game over the next 5 years, oh, he's going to be a monster. He's going to be a monster. I don't even like, even if he's never a primary shot creator, he's so good at a bunch of different things, and he's got a great feel for the game. For me, it's like, dude, if that guy can become a reliable 3-point shooter, he's going to have a nice career.